Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Buddy Study Group for Worksite Solutions. Today, what I want to talk about is to continue to round out um, the discussions that actually face your group when you're working through a group long-term care sale. I know we do a lot of focus on case prep. I know we do a lot of focus on educating employees. We do a lot of focus on our tools, our resources, things like that. I want to make sure we're always relating that to the actual sale, to the conversation with the group as much as possible. Um, for many of you, I've uh, accompanied you on calls with groups that you're working with, and you've gotten to see it that way live and in color. But for those of you who are still looking to dive in or are having your own separate conversations with the groups that you're working with, I just want to be able to give you some of that perspective or give you a different perspective on how the conversation goes. And just give you guys an idea of, yeah, we know all the ways we can prepare ahead of time. If you're a frequent attendee of the study group, you know the tools. But what am I actually bringing with me, and how am I actually using those in my discussions with the group, and how are they different in the discussions that I have with you all on actually how to go and sell the case? So feel free to impart your own experiences as we go. But I want to help you as best I can with this piece of it because it's the most important piece. I think just if you're able to establish rapport with a group right from the rip and you're able to nimbly kind of handle the hundreds of potential questions that could pop up and know how to point to the correct resource, we probably have something on hand to help answer that question. But I just want to help you guys really understand your range of motion in these conversations. And Steve, I know you're one of the folks on the call that I've actually joined for a group discussion. And I know you have discussions with tons of groups that you work with. But I'm not sure how many long-term care conversations that you've had, but did you find anything was different in the conversation we had in the group that you worked with versus how you would normally do it or how you do it for, say, other benefits?
Well, yeah. I really don't have that much experience with long term care. We've sold a lot of the Chubb LBT, and we
Sure.
have the Phoenix Transit System as our largest account. So we have a lot of policies there, but it was always sold in conjunction with other voluntary benefits. So I've never done a
Sure.
standalone, and I don't have much experience doing Zoom. In the history of when I've been doing since I've been doing this, it's always been face to face or just over the phone. So
Yeah.
the whole Zoom experience is new to me, but I want to hopefully get to a point where I feel comfortable with it, and I don't have to call you in every time. But you did a great job, and I will say the broker that was involved, he felt the same way when we got off that call. He said he was really impressed with you and with what Buddy has to offer. So
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I can understand that remote can be a totally different dynamic. It's not as easy to sort of generate interest or feel like you're able to grip that person in the same way as in person. Even things like body language can be a bit harder to sort of
mhm.
pick up on to know, am I doing a good job or am I just kind of a walking stream of consciousness that everybody's subject to, right? Um, but I think one of the things that, because I've taken this journey just like Steve, just like all of you, in being completely new to the group side and the group long-term care products themselves. I wasn't new to long-term care. Of course, I had that leg up. Steve is not new to the group side or group benefits. He has that leg up. But what was interesting to me in the adjustment process is just how many questions come up and how many different areas those questions can entail. And every single group is different, right? So
Yeah.
You will have groups um, that don't know the first thing about long-term care. Honestly,
Mhm.
they were brought to the table because their broker recommended that they take a look at this product to add to their benefits package, and beyond that, there's not much.
Mhm.
There are some groups on the other side of the coin that have been itching to get something in place for long-term care for one reason or another, and you're in the right place at the right time, but they have a heck of a lot of questions. So it's like, I don't know what questions to ask. I guess start from the beginning, which for some that's a comfortable thing. For me, that's a little bit harder. I kind of get where I'm going by asking a few questions to start. But for others, there are so many different questions that you almost need to help this thing settle into a rhythm, right? So I think just in general, being a good conversationalist and being able to adapt is key. It's a lot of soft skills, right? All sales kind of are to some degree. But I think you'll start uh, in the same place generally if you are being brought into like a first discussion with a group, like no existing relationship. I generally want to start with something very general and give people a really long runway to tell me everything that's on their mind, right? They don't go into this call with a blank mind and it's like talking to a wall. They have stuff on their mind, and the questions and context will start flowing immediately. So I try to say something like, tell me a little bit about your organization, how you guys culturally see benefits, but in particular, do you have any experience yourself or anybody on your team with long-term care? What comes to your mind when long-term care is mentioned? Why are we sitting across the table from each other today? Right? And regardless of what I have prepared ahead of time, I know that based on what comes out of their mouth, I may need to throw that out the window, or some of it, right? It may not be pertinent to the conversation, or I feel that the conversation is going to focus on some other area more that I might need a different resource for. And to be honest, that's a good thing. If the client is driving the discussion in any way, shape, or form, there's interest. There's this request for knowledge and you're able to fill it regardless. So let's do that, right? I mean, you have to make sure some time is carved out to go through the important things at the end of the day, the things that you have to have done before the call ends. But if you spend the majority of your time figuring out what is bugging your client or what they want to know, what they're excited about, that is the best thing you could possibly do. And they'll go along for the ride and filling in the rest of the blanks, at some point in the call or in a future follow-up meeting. Um, so that's just how I approach the conversation. Now, let me just go over some of the resources in the buddy system that I personally like to have prepared ahead of time, right? This is kind of like just in case. And if you've been on a ton of study groups or you talk to me a lot, one of the big things I'm a major fan of is just in case versus just in time knowledge and resources. Okay, so I believe there are some things you should always have ready just in case, and there are some things that you will pull up just in time. So, number one, I do not like the idea of going into a meeting without using Product Buddy first. Period. End of story. I do not do it. I go into Product Buddy the moment I get a whisper about potentially being pulled in on a case. It's the absolute first thing I do when I talk to anybody and they don't know how to start with a group case. It's an every time thing. It's what it provides is so simple, and the information it requires to do its thing is so simple. You need a state, you need whether this is an employer group or not, and you need how many employees are we working with, and you're going to find out your range of motion, right? So this allows my gears to start turning of here are the products available, even if I have an idea ahead of time. But what I can't always keep track of, I don't have a supercomputer memory is how do the products actually work from a case highlights perspective, right? That's really going to, whoa, AI advisors trying to hijack the study group. These are the most important things. This is going to determine my hierarchy. This is going to determine, all right, if I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to bring one pager in to show the concept, this will help me sort to what might be the best option to bring in for that singular one pager. So I try to prepare one pager and maybe an additional if there's merit and there's two really good options that we can go kind of side by side with. But the question may come up in the meeting. This is great. I'm getting a good sense of this product, this plan design, this example. I use this to teach generally on how do these products work through the lens of one carrier. But the question may come up, oh, okay, this is great. What other options do you have? I may share Product Buddy live and in color on these meetings and say, this is a tool we have to just show us what is available altogether for true group hybrids that we work with. And here are your available options. And that'll help me talk through the differences. Like if I go in there with a one pager on the standard, or let's say Trustmark Life Plus Care is the top, option available based on the state. I'll say, um, I'll talk about the other carriers that are available and why I may or may not heavily consider them. And I always, try to make it clear that I'm going to get you a proposal for every carrier we can get a proposal for, but not all of them will make it to the finalist table. I think with the way these products are designed and the way the rules work in each state with each carrier, there are going to be some clear finalists and there are going to be clear pieces that don't make it to the finalist table, and here's why. Okay, so that's just how I like to prepare just in case for Product Buddy. I like to have one or two of these one pagers loaded up, but just in time, I may actually just live screen share the tool just to show them here are the options available. Like, for example, if I'm working in Massachusetts with a group, I am bringing Trustmark Life Plus Care as a one pager. Massachusetts, I know off the top of my head to be extremely limited, and I know the plan design of Life Plus Care in Massachusetts is really the best thing going right now. But I could bring in ULE just to show that there is a different chassis, right? Or, um, you know, I would probably actually stick with Trustmark. They tend to dominate Massachusetts as far as good plan designs available. But in the meeting, if they're asking about what other products are available, I might say, look, I'm going to get you a proposal for Standard and Transamerica just so we can have it, we can shop the market, and if anything new has developed with this product that I'm not aware of, we can be made aware of that through a formal proposal. But I can show you right here that there's no extension or restoration. That is really the heart of the value of these plants. So that's kind of just in case, just in time when it comes to um, Product Buddy. And when we go through the one pager, I'm talking about, these rates are sample rates for a 45-year-old. A lot of the times I'll get a question of, well, the person I'm 56. What would that look like for me? How much do the premiums change, based on your age? That's where I can go into Quick Quote and be ready with just in time. Or if I bring two one pagers and they're asking me, okay, well, yeah, how do these further compare? That's where the Quick Quote tool comes in, right? I can show, for example, a Trustmark Life Plus Care, and I could actually compare it directly to our universal life events. And I can show them right up front, okay, you know, you, Mr. HR person or CFO, whoever I'm meeting with, director, you can get an idea of how everything is going to change premium wise based on age, but then we can also compare carrier to carrier. And we can look at different ages and really kind of understand these kind of come in surprisingly close from a premium perspective at a lower age, but at a higher age, we may be looking at paying more. One of the things that I like about Life Plus Care, though, is it will actually account for employer funding, which is generally going to be required for groups under 100 lives for Trustmark in general. ULE does not at this moment. So there's just a lot of comparison you can do just in time here. But Product Buddy is really going to be used for me in the conversation as how do these uh, products actually work from a plan design perspective? Because in their intended sort of best setting, they all work very similarly, identically, with just some nuances, right? And as they ask about nuances, whether it involves price, whether it involves product, I'm either pulling up another plan design in Product Buddy, or I'm taking them to the quick quote and I'm doing a little bit of an analysis here. And the census quote. So all of this, guys, is totally contingent on where you are in the conversation. I generally will create employer funded summaries for people that I'm working with if they're going to go into their first meeting with a group, but I don't necessarily recommend uh, walking in and plopping this on the table or screen share, so to speak, right? I think it's just a little premature to force this right into the conversation. But as the conversation drifts toward and as the questions come up about participation and eligibility. And so, what are the carrier's rules for enrolling this? That's where I will start to work in, especially if I'm in front of a smaller group. Participation tends to be a hurdle for smaller groups because even for our carriers who go down to 3 lives, 5 lives, we still have participation minimums, right? And voluntary participation for long-term care as opposed to other benefits because of the education required and so on, um, tends to be a little bit harder to get, tends to be a bit harder to hit participation minimums. And one of the ways we make sure we do that is by having at least a small presence of employer funding. Now, early on in the conversation, when you ask, like, how are you culturally doing benefits? For example, I met with a group a few weeks ago and they said, we're a nonprofit. I'll be honest, we can't afford to pay our employees crazy salaries by payroll. But one of the ways that, we use some of our proceeds and maintain our nonprofit status is by providing rich benefits to our employees. So in that sense, I might drift more toward this to start, or at least drift the conversation a little bit more toward employer funding earlier on because I know they're already culturally interested in paying for benefits for employees. It's part of their circuitry, right? So I want to show them how long-term care fits into what they're doing, right? As part of the discussion. So I have had cases where I've come prepared with an employer funded summary and I didn't use it because the conversation did not dictate it. I felt just in my reading of the room that it did not feel good to shoehorn it in. I made sure it was part of the conversation, right? Like long-term care is made better by employer funding, especially for groups of this size. But I sensed it was something they maybe weren't fully ready for at the moment. So I was going to focus on other needs, other questions they had. But I've had some where I've come with an employer funded summary and I've used it within the first 20 minutes of the call. And they were already asking about, okay, are there alternate sets of numbers I can see? And I've opened up Census Quote live and I've actually built it for them in front of them. And that is really helpful when you're able to walk through the census quote tool and any little addition, subtraction that they want to make, any benefit level they want to look at, you can make it appear in front of their eyes. It's been a really good experience in those cases to actually walk through that. Or maybe they'll come out and say, like, here's the available budget I can imagine us having or getting approved. So the numbers you shared are great, really informative, but I want something that sticks to a $2,000 a month budget. So nice to be able to dial this up just in time. Like they are asking for something specific, and it's not a takeaway for another meeting. You're able to capitalize on that interest and specific ask immediately. I think that's the most important part about having some of these buddy system tools here. I don't have to wait. I don't have to make them wait. I can just, I quench the thirst, so to speak, immediately. So that's kind of just in case versus just in time for census quote. I've got it in the back pocket in case I need it. In many cases, I will if they ask, hey, what is the typical cost look like for employer funding? I see the sample rates on the one pager. That looks a little high if I'm looking at all my employees, right? But then I can show an employer funded summary where we start at a much smaller rate, or I could show them in quick quote that yeah, for a 45-year-old individual, if we drop the benefit down to 25,000, the premium looks microscopic compared to what we were looking at on the one pager. But I can actually run through census quote live and show them like we have a way to get this as cheap as, you know, a couple of $100 a month for a group of 15 employees at 25,000 death benefit. I had a group of 8 who wasn't sure if they were going to do employer funding, and I'll tell you, there was no employee in this group that was over the age of 47, and the average age was like 36. And I said, I said to myself, the premium they're probably thinking in their head as the business owner for their own premium, their individualized premium is probably what the cost of the whole group is for a 25,000 standard term to 100. So we haven't had the meeting to actually present those numbers yet, but I mean, I show them like $130 a month for a premium to get a plan for everyone. I think hearts and minds are going to change a little bit when I show them that and show them how cheap it is. So that's just in case versus just in time for census quote. Now, what I have not covered, because there are not groups that only ask about product is there are a lot of enrollment questions that generally will come up as a part of the conversation, especially if the person you're meeting with is HR rather than the business owner or the CFO. I think knowing your audience is important. If it's CFO, you may be talking about employer funding. And generally there's interest in something of that nature if the CFO is on, or they're going to have questions around billing and things of that nature. HR is going to have questions around how do I get my employees to find out about it? Is their enrollment experience easy? How many questions will I have to answer? The business owner could have any sort of range of those questions and anything in between. But I would say, on the whole, no matter who I have in front of me, a lot of enrollment questions come up. And I think the best way to be able to prepare your just in case versus just in time is to have a demo page from our marketing section ready. These are excellent, excellent tools. And I would say just like the one pagers, right? I prepare one pager that I think is like the top candidate in my mind, maybe a second. Same thing with the demo page. I want to have one of those locked and loaded and at least know what demo page I might be pulling up in the meeting if enrollment questions come up, if marketing and communications questions come up. So demo, I search it a lot. Just search demo in the marketing section and it will pull up our demo pages and you can tab over or up here, you can tab over and we have all of the plan designs that you see in Product Buddy for the most part are available here. Of each of our 4 carriers, and we will continue to add more of these over time, they're represented in some way, shape, or form. So It flows nicely if you're using a one pager based around that top candidate to talk through how group long-term care works in today's market from an effective standpoint, like a general standpoint. It's good to have an idea of what you might show on the quick quote if questions arise about specific pricing. Census quote, it's good to be prepared with an employer-funded summary. And it's good to have a demo page locked and loaded. I keep a tab open with a demo page for each group conversation I'll have based on my case prep, right? So that you can pull up on the fly. Let's say we're talking term to 100 with 5% inflation on it. With the standard, we have a few more plan designs available. We're actually prepped with demo pages for the California version of the whole life with 5% inflation. We have the whole life without it. We have term life with inflation, and then just your regular term to 100. But when I pull up this landing page, I generally preface it by saying, this is essentially what the enrollment experience looks like on the back end. It contains essentially the heartbeat of the employee education and enrollment. Everything flows through here come enrollment time. So read this like a cue card. You can scroll through it, and not only will it show, the tech you have backing this thing up, but it'll show the simplicity of the process and the depth of education that you provide to employees. So, number one, I talked about this being the heartbeat or the conduit of the enrollment. Well, it's integrated with the enrollment page. The enrollment link goes here. This will take them directly to their application. First and foremost, I think that's super important. Sometimes it's just deploying a link, um, to the application back end on an intranet and no other sort of education or resources, maybe a couple paragraphs on the benefit. But right here, we're already integrated. We have calculators that we can put together that are based on the actual proposal that your group is moving forward with, right? So uh, if you've gone through quick quote already on the discussion, this should look pretty familiar, right? Look familiar? We'll have this for your employees to actually decide on what benefit level they may want to purchase. They can essentially try on coverage, which in many experiences doesn't exist until you get into the enrollment platform and do a little slider and check the premium, and that's about all you get. What is the benefit? What is the premium? So we're able to dive pretty deep with our calculators, right? We can compare this to the individual market. We can compare it to the cost of long-term care in their given state. We can compare it to what if I took the same premium and self-funded using the market, right? So there's a lot of insights that can be kept this simple, or at the end of the day, an employee can dive as deep as they want if they're really analytical. We have helpful graphics that, by the way, are based on what you have entered in the calculator. I hit $75,000 here. These graphics actually update to show the real scenario that the employee is looking at in the calculator. So it explains really simply how the benefit works. We do webinars. We're going to have webinars. They're going to be recorded and they're going to be shared on this page. So any employee who misses a webinar or just wakes up one day and realizes that this benefit exists, you can direct them to this page, and there will be an hour of recorded content around the plan, around long-term care planning. It's kind of like an orientation to the benefit, right? We sometimes have two or three webinars per enrollment period. They'll all be here, and generally we switch up the content from one webinar to the next. So there will be a nice library. We talk about some of the most important pieces to know. If you're not going to read any further into the benefit, these are important things to know, right? We have long-term care and life in one policy. By the way, premiums are fixed, guaranteed issue coverage. Spouses can get coverage as well. Oh, and if you leave the employer or retire, this is portable. And then we talk about just some of the general education, some of the graphics, the cost of care, Again, keeping things really high level and simple, but allowing people to dive as deep as they want. Super easy instructions for enrollment. A lot of the time, because it's guaranteed issue, people get through our enrollment platform in about 10 minutes with their certificate of coverage. As long as they sit down and do it in one shot, it should be very quick. And then FAQs that are specific to the actual plan itself. And there is a long list of it. And in many enrollments, we make long-term care specialist consultants available. In your case, when you're presenting to a group, you may be that specialist, right? So this button actually takes them to my Calendly link and they can schedule 15 minutes at a time with me and I can consult them on the benefit. I can help them enroll if they're feeling stuck, whatever it may be. So you're seeing how just with a few scrolls and just saying what I see live on the page, I'm actually talking about a lot of the things that is probably on HR's mind. Am I going to have to answer all these questions? No. They can schedule with Jason to take 15 minutes or one of Jason's specialists and take 15 minutes at a time and get all their questions answered in one shot. Where do what do I have to do to make sure employees get to the enrollment page? All you have to do is drive them to this landing page, and you can make sure they get to all that we have to offer, right? Um, Enrollment platform is built right into this, and they'll have credentials to log in. What if I get product questions? Well, beyond the specialists, right? You have this benefit calculator that you can dive into. On the webinars that are educational, that also keep HR and the group from being asked too many questions they don't know the answer to and playing a bad game of telephone with the carrier or with us, we'll cover that on a webinar. Generally, people ask tons of questions and it ends up being a really good learning experience. Um, so I think just taking this step by step and literally using it as your cue card, based on the plan design you were working with in Product Buddy and in the census quote or however it comes up, uh, is the best way to do it to handle a lot of enrollment-based questions. Um, so I know I've gone through a lot and we've gone through a lot of this before, right? I don't feel like I'm showing you different resources. I'm trying to get you to understand that you got to think on your feet sometimes and let the client's questions guide the discussion. And there are things you should always have prepared, but there are things that are right at your fingertips, depending on where the discussion goes. You can answer that question or make that visualization happen like up to the second. So as long as you know what to have prepared just in case and what you can pull up just in time, that's extremely useful. Um, you will be well positioned to have the conversation that makes that person you're talking to happy, interested, and ready to drive everything forward. If you go through a presentation like that and you ask for to get things started, we and get formal proposals, we got to get a census. I think if you do a good enough job with that upfront discussion, you're going to get a census in hand, right? It's not going to be like, oh, I got to think about it. They're just going to get it done and they're going to get it out, because you've been able to bring a lot of surety to anything that may make them hesitant about moving forward. Keisha asked, where and how do they get the credentials to log in? So that's generally going to be different depending on which platform is used. Um, it's hard to say generally. A lot of the time it's just essentially the company email that you enter to get started, and then there's a like two-factor authentication. You just got to confirm a four-digit code from your email and you can log in. Others will have, say, your email and your birth year plus the last four of your social as your password to log in. I forget what some of the others are, but it's generally very simple and it's easy enough to educate and kind of slap onto that page or make mention of in opening and closing of the webinar. that we're able to arm people with that. And it's generally included in enrollment communications as well, right? Um, so I wanted to put a little bit of a different spin on just like, hey, let me remind you of the resources. I wanted to show you guys like contextually based on what pops up in conversation where I might pivot. And the more conversations you have, the more you use the buddy system, the more you're going to be an expert at pivoting. And just the power of being able to summon the exact answer at any time really does help leave people feeling good about meeting with you. Um, Gretchen, any other resources? I know you're not often on the actual sale itself a lot of the time.
No, I'm not.
But
And there's good reason for that. They
no,
keep
there is.
marketing and sales very separate.
Uh, don't let her fool you. She's actually a pretty good salesperson and prospector.
Um, any other resources? Well, I'm sorry I came in a little late because I had another call before this, but
She was landing a big sale.
yeah. So you went through, I saw you went through the demo
I
pages.
went through the core. I went through Product
Okay,
Buddy, Quick Quote, Census Quote, and I said, like, if I'm going into a group discussion or in some I've had lately, what do I have prepared just in case? And what do I have prepared, like, just in time as the questions come up? I think the
right.
small group page might be
I was
another
just going
one.
to say that the small group page is amazing. Thanks to
Yes.
Jason and Joe for putting together all the information. And it'll walk you through. And let me just preface this: it's technically for small groups, but the process itself kind of applies to many groups. So don't get too hung up on the term small group, but it does walk you through the process. It's a super awesome tool. Um,
Yeah, and I think one dichotomy between this page and say our group
mhm.
sales process page. This is more like I'm an agent. How do I sell this thing? Small group is a bit actually more group facing. Now, I probably wouldn't walk a group through this page,
No,
but
no,
I
right.
would study it. I would
Yeah,
actually study this ahead of time because this gives answers to a lot of edge cases that number one, I didn't bring up in this presentation so far, but number two, you're either going to want to ask proactively, um, or an educated group is going to ask about. You know, if it's not their first rodeo with enrolling a benefit, right? They they will likely ask some of these things, or it's a question you will want to ask. How are we going to reach employees, right? You could speak to just the fact that we are going to work on reaching employees. How do you communicate with your employees? That's a great kind of sharp question to ask when you're meeting with a group. Timeline, right? What are some of the things we'll actually need to set up later down the line? Um, and I think HR is always going to want to know what their role is, and they're hoping it's not going to be too difficult. So a lot of the things we outlined with the demo page and a lot of the things contained in this page will show you that if you stick to these sorts of principles and always make sure you're answering these questions behind the scenes, HR's role is going to be very easy and they'll love you for it. The groups where we make things really easy for HR, we show up on calls, they're like our best friends. I'm like, it's so strange. It's like we literally, just help you guys offer an insurance product to your employees, but they're like, yes, but you make it so easy. We love you guys. And I think that's something to strive for.
the
Checklist.
oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I was going to remind you too, something that the other new tool that we have, and maybe you showed it and I just missed it, is the carrier list, but that's in a different section. So keep going.
Yeah, yeah, we'll show that one too. Um, the enrollment checklist is going to definitely like you could just pull up the enrollment checklist and um they will know you're prepared.
Hmm.
Even if it's your first rodeo, they'll be like, "Oh, this isn't their first rodeo in implementing this benefit, right? There's a lot of stuff covered that, the group may not even be thinking about. So that's a big deal. Um, how much easier does it get than pre-packaged email series for enrollments, for communications? I would say, what do you think, Gretchen? Like 95% plus of the groups we work with, maybe that's conservative, do email communications for
Oh yeah,
enrollments.
yeah, yeah.
Hey, I already got a package of emails that you can use, right? Flyers, presentations, like here's how I'm going to help your employees get the most out of this benefit.
Mhm.
Tons of tools and benefits guides pages. Do you guys have a benefits guide? I got a page that can slot right into that. Um, Articles, like now we're putting out pros to your group right, about their benefit. We've got benefits guides, we've got flyers, we've got emails, and then we just have straight up articles around long-term care planning. Um, and obviously, again, like I started at the beginning of the call, you got to read the room and read the audience. Some are going to like eat it up. All right, yeah, tell me what else you have. Tell me what else you have. Others, you're going to have to kind of build this up slowly and really kind of hit on the spot that gets them excited, right? And go from there. So showing them all of this in one shot probably not a good idea in any case, no matter how excited, right? If you show too many things at once, it's going to be difficult. But I think studying up on this, knowing it's there and knowing you can pull any of these pieces up anytime, that is really the power. Or if you know there's an interest in one or some of these things ahead of time, you have it prepared right then and there.
Yeah, usually what we do is when we have the kickoff call, is we identify the channels. So how do
Hmm.
they communicate to their employees, association members, whoever it is, and then we can, have readily available the tools that they need to sort of insert the information into what they're already doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like especially once the group is actually sold, this
Hmm.
page becomes a behemoth. It's like it's really going to answer a lot of the questions that come up. Even you as the agent, what are we going to have to set up? Contracting, what paperwork is the group going to have to sign? So having that knowledge ahead of time, like if we move forward, there's just a group application to be signed, and that's all we need to do to start kickoff, where we start talking about marketing communications, things of that nature. And I think the question that could really trip people up the most is kind of post enrollment and any sort of support, right? So I think just reading this section in general, I'm sure this section will also beef up a little bit more in time because we're working on a lot of post-enrollment things ourselves,
Mhm.
because sometimes it can be a little bit of a black hole on the carrier side, where we don't want to leave a void. If it takes the carrier time, if it takes a couple of weeks maybe for the carrier to actually reach the employee with instructions to log into their portal. We want to preempt some of that and just we want to be the one who's at the door, 30 minutes after they sign up for their application with information on what's next, right? So I think all of this adds up to this page is geared around what do I do when the case is sold, but I think groups will come to you even in that first call with questions about marketing, about how would
Mhm.
this all work if we were to enroll it. I use this Ben admin system. How am I going to promote to my employees, right? The demo page and the small group page in general even take some of these principles for larger groups. Um, will be more helpful to you than you know, and that's why we always recommend that you study up on it a bit. Um, that's always where I see like I'll accompany people on calls and they'll be like, I want you to just set it up and talk about like what long-term care is, and then I'll do the rest. And where I see them get tripped up and ask for help is really on questions related to what's on the process page, or what does the enrollment itself, the experience look like? So I wanted to make sure I impart that. But I think that's most of what I plan to go over and maybe a little more. Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts on this? I think if you keep it to just in case, just in time, and have those two kind of separated and just know where to go for any specific question in the buddy system, that is the most important piece of this. Um, and from there, you just need to continue to have more conversations. More familiarity means easier execution each and every time. But here, if anybody has any other questions or thoughts.
Actually, I'm going to expand on that a little bit because um, what we're going to do next week, is it okay if I go there, Jason?
Absolutely, it is.
Um, and Dale's on this call. Dale Berry, the Berries, Dale Berry with an E and Gretchen Berry with an A, are going to do a session next week on how to identify and close group cases. So I'm sure everybody on this call has a book of business. And when we were talking on the leadership meeting, who would be the best person to talk to about this? And everybody said Dale. So I booked Dale, Dale Berry, not Dale Evans.
You called me Dale Evans. I could not believe that.
I did. I did. I'm sorry, Dale.
And for you young people, you wouldn't know what who Dale Evans is, but if you're older, Dale Evans was Roy Rogers' wife.
Sidekick,
Right.
yeah. Oh, that was funny. Anyway, the two berries are gonna take the reins next week and yeah, hopefully help everybody get a better understanding of effective ways to identify and new business and close those cases. So yeah, look for that next Mark.
I don't know anybody who likes closing cases. Who likes closing cases? It's such an easy show up just based on the title. I'm in. I'm excited to learn from you, Dale, as well. I think we can all learn stuff from each other. It's just a difference of perspective. Um, I haven't really been on a lot of Dale's calls actually because he just goes in and makes it happen
He
himself.
just does his thing.
I just kind of make sure he's got his backpack on and gets on the bus, and he takes care of the rest. He comes back with everything done. So definitely excited to hear from you on that, Dale.
That's only because I get reminders from Gretchen and Sandy.
There you go. There you go. Sometimes, no matter who you are, you need something to help you despite yourself, right? I've got
So,
plenty of those. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, comments, or thoughts, I think we can wrap it here. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hope it helps you in your future group conversations. Like I said, if we help even one person on one item, it's a success. So hope you take this with you for your memory banks. Be well, and we'll talk to you this time next week. Have a good one.
Bye.